For Black leaders, mentoring without micromanaging and directing or being prescriptive is really tricky because we know that the work that we present is going to be judged on a different scale, right? It's looked at, it's dissected. So the key is shifting from fixing the work and going through and redlining and telling people what to do to raising the standard of their thinking. And this is a lesson they take with them as they move up and on, right? And then they can then teach the next generation. It's legacy. For me, it's about legacy, right?
This is a tough thing for some people to admit. There are some people who might be concerned about somebody outshining them, and that person might be somebody that reports to them. Okay, so let's go back to the point about when you're leading others, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as Black professionals, we often feel like we need to be twice as good to meet a minimum expectation, right?
Yep.
So we're trying to make sure we deliver a good result, a great result. But when you're leading others, you need to kind of, like we talked about, make space for their opinions and kind of give them a little bit of room.
Yeah.
How do you mentor your team and guide them the direction they need to go for high performance without tinkering with their ideas too much?
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance between those things?
So I'm glad you asked this question because this is one that's very near and dear to my heart. I've been mentoring people for 25 years, so this is really important. For Black leaders, mentoring without micromanaging and directing or being prescriptive is really tricky because we know that the work that we present is going to be judged on a different scale. There's a different curve for us than everybody else, right? It's looked at, it's dissected, the minutia that goes into our review is completely next level. So the key is shifting from fixing the work and going through and redlining and telling people what to do to raising the standard of their thinking.
Okay.
You want to ask them the same questions you ask yourself when you are creating something. What's the goal? What's the risk? What's the story this work needs to tell? You're teaching them to think through your lens, a lens, right? And then they actually do the work themselves. So it's not your style. It's not exactly the way you would do it, but you're teaching them to ask themselves the tough questions that makes their output twice as good as they would normally do on their own. So it's legacy. For me, it's about legacy, right? You're teaching them how to think about their work and the questions they need to ask themselves so that they can produce the highest quality output possible.
Okay. So ask, don't tell.
Ask, don't tell.
And then you're getting them to adjust their thought process, not just the output.
Right. And this is a lesson they take with them as they move up and on. Right. And then they can then teach the next generation it's how you think and it's how you look at things versus just the doing part.
Okay. And some people, this is a tough thing for some people to admit, but in marginalized communities, there are some people who might be concerned about somebody outshining them, and that person might be somebody that reports to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can lead a leader to maybe block or not give enough credit when really as a leader, part of your job is to help the people that you're leading shine. And
absolutely
get out of the way of taking all the credit and say, well done, so-and-so worked on this and did a fantastic job, right?
Yeah.
How do you help Black professionals make that shift of being in survival mode to show and demonstrate their value, to sharing that spotlight and lifting up the people that are below them without the fear that it's going to have a consequence professionally?
Well, I always tell people the better your team performs, the better you look, right? So you want your team performing and the individuals on your team performing at their maximum. That only makes you look good and better as a leader. And also that word legacy, right? I don't have kids. I got no legacy of little DNA running around after me. But for me, my legacy has always been about the future leaders that I can look back at now and say,
Yeah.
wow, that they are doing amazing. And I know that a little part of that is because of my leadership. And so, again, it's the ego. Get out of your own way, stop making it all about you, and make it more about the enterprise.
So a big part of this sounds like, Alicia, that is also about shifting your mindset to what does value mean once you
Mm-hmm.
get to a certain level, particularly if you're in a leadership role. Because
Mm-hmm.
if as an individual contributor, your value is your direct output and your direct work.
Mm-hmm.
The ideas that you're bringing, the work that you're doing, how you're performing it, efficiency, that type of thing. As a
Yep.
leader, how is your team producing and how are you guiding others in multiplying yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Passing your own knowledge and skill set and abilities, and also lifting the potential of the people that you're leading so that they produce a greater output together than they would individually, right?
Right.
So if you're measuring yourself by that different standard of how well is your team performing collectively and individually, that takes the individualized angle out of it, and it should help alleviate that fear, I would think, if you shift your mindset. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it would, but again, I think we also have a bit of self-preservation thinking,
Yeah,
right? We have to think about that's all well and good, but
yeah,
what about me, right? And I'm
right.
not saying you can't have a what about me moment because you also want to move up and be promoted and things like that. But I think it's important that you find the happy balance of statements like, my team delivered this project on time, on budget, actually early and on budget. And we worked collaboratively across the organization. And that was all the result of the strategy that I developed. Right. So
Okay.
you get the team in there, but you make it real clear what you did. And I'm big on receipts. I always, every company I worked for, I had an Attaboy file that I put all of the accolades, all the things that I needed to pull out at review time, et cetera, all the comments of people saying things, but you got to have your receipts of what you've done because that is really critical for you to make sure that you are getting your shine as well as your team.
Okay. So being clear on what the key leadership competencies are and
Yes,
demonstrating that you're delivering on those, it could be a way for you to be clear on what you need to communicate.
absolutely.
Okay.